Good afternoon. Thank you for coming to the Manatee Tiger Bay Club luncheon today. My name is Xtavia Bailey. I am the president, and I will be moderating. Would you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? Oh, there it is. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated. We would like to recognize any veterans or active duty members in the audience. Would you please stand? Any veterans? No veterans today? Oh, I see you. Please give him a round of applause. Hey, Cliff. Now, where's Commissioner Ballard? Is she here? Hey, we're going to recognize Commissioner Ballard. Thank you for coming today. Would you please silence your cell phones? Even if you silence, please double check for me. I appreciate it. Today's topic for Manatee Tiger Bay is when support decreases, giving grows, resilience, generosity, and the power of community. Our speakers will be Wendy Deming, CEO of Bishop Parker Foundation, Veronica Thames, CEO, Manatee County Community Foundation, and Tracy Vanderneck, President of PhilCom LLC. Our first speaker is Wendy Deming. She is the CEO of Bishop Parker Foundation. As CEO of the foundation since February 2024, Wendy leads its efforts to strengthen the Manatee County community. A seasoned nonprofit executive with more than 25 years of experience in the independent sector, Wendy has been at the center of bold and transformative change throughout her career. Before joining the Bishop Parker Foundation, Wendy served 5 years as COO and Corporate Secretary at Marie Selby Botanical Gardens. Before joining the Gardens, Wendy served as COO and Corporate Secretary of Gulf Coast Community Foundation, where she was a team member for nearly 18 years. In those positions, she managed operations and human resources functions during times of growth for both organizations. She was trusted advisor to the organization's CEOs, to board members, and ensured commitment to governance best practice. She has experience in planning and executing strategic plans, facilitating board retreats, securing accreditations, and facilitating a nonprofit merger. Wendy earned an MBA from George Mason University and a BA in accounting from Furman University. She earned a certificate in governance consulting from Board Source in 2017. Please give her a round of applause as she comes forward.
Okay, I agree. I need to shorten my bio after listening to all of that. Thank you for putting up with that. It's great to be here today. Thank you for joining us. I want to start by just sharing a little bit about Bishop Parker Foundation. We are a relatively new private foundation in Manatee County, right about 3 years old as an operating foundation. And we can trace our history back to John Huntington, that gentleman there in the picture, who was a business partner of John Rockefeller in Cleveland, Ohio. And that was his home in Millionaires Row in Cleveland. If any of you are from that area, you'll know what we're talking about. And John Huntington's granddaughter was Patty Bishop, the woman in the middle there. She was an heiress to Mr. Huntington's wealth. And while she was in Cleveland, married somebody who lived very close in the neighborhood, Mr. Ned Bishop. They married in 1914 and moved to Bradenton that same year. So they were part of a very interesting time in Manatee County as things were changing quite rapidly. They came here mainly because of Ned Bishop's health. He developed a heart condition as a child and was doing much better in the warm climate of Florida than they did in Cleveland. Plus, as you can tell by Ned's jaunty little cap there, he was a sailor and loved being on the water. And in Manatee County had the opportunity to access both salt and fresh water. And as I'm learning about the bishops, I also learned that when you have a boat in salt water that has barnacles on it, the only way you can get them off is by putting it in fresh water. So it was a great reason to be here. And Mary Parker, the woman who is on your right in the color photo there, was a young nurse in Bradenton at that time. And because of Ned's health issues, she needed some help, or they needed some full-time nursing care. Brought in Mary Parker, who went quickly from being nurse to family manager right away. They fell in love with one another and created a family of 3. And for those of you who've been in Manatee County for a long time, might have had the opportunity to know Mary Parker while she was still alive. So the threesome supported many organizations in Manatee County and Bradenton. The planetarium, we all know, was named originally after the bishops, and now the entire museum is, which is wonderful, in partnership with Dr. Sugg, who is the gentleman on the far right in the glasses. They did a lot of good in Manatee County, from starting the hospital, which was the Veterans Memorial Hospital, now Manatee Memorial Hospital, as well as where we're standing right now. They were instrumental in the creation of the Manatee Players, which is now Manatee Performing Arts Council, or Performing Arts Center. So a lot of Bishop and Parker fingerprints all over Manatee County because of their generosity and their care for the community. And here's one picture I always like to show. Sneed Island Boat Works was a project of Mr. Bishop as well. He heard about it and then kept his yachts there because of the access to fresh water, as I was talking about. So the mission and vision for our foundation, inspired by the philanthropic legacies that I was just telling you about, we are here to fund nonprofit and community partners who collaborate to advance Manatee County for this and future generations. And our vision is what our founders hope for: a thriving and connected Manatee County where everyone has the opportunity for a fulfilling lifetime. And we do this by living our values of stewardship, community building, and kindness. So we focus on all of those values in everything that we do. And our grants and funding focus on a broad variety of areas. Just about any nonprofit in this community would align with our focus areas, as long as they're all working together for the benefit of Manatee County. So we do have traditional grant cycles. Many of you are working with us right now, actively submitting your grants for that September 30th deadline. But our foundation, since we combine the assets of the SPCA Foundation with Bishop Parker, we grant about $9 million in the community every year through 2 different grant cycles, our spring and fall grant cycle as well as our small grant cycle. But we also are involved in several community initiatives. The Manatee Food Security Network is one, where we are convening more than 50 providers in food security, bringing them together to figure out how we can help those most in need in Manatee County. And our newest initiative, which is launching this month, and my colleague Amber Lamerson is leading over there, so if you'd like more information, you can see Amber, is North River Manatee County. This is brand new. It's in partnership with the Harwood Institute and the Patterson Foundation to try and bring community-led change to the areas north of the river: Palmetto, Ellington, Terracea, Rabonia, Parrish, Duet. So we are just starting this. Many of you have been invited to come to community roundtables and will be invited to interview for this. So more to come. I would like to invite you, though, to our roundtable, or not our roundtable, our keynote in October with Rich Harwood, and we can provide you with more information on that. But now, for the reason you all are here, let's talk about the funding cuts and how they're going to impact our nonprofits here. I think it's always helpful when you're talking about things like this to step back and understand the sector in which we're working. Giving USA produces an annual report. You can always have access free of charge to the executive summary every year. And if you are involved in a nonprofit, I really encourage you to do so. But when you look back at charitable giving in 2024 across the entire country, almost $600 billion was contributed to charities in 2024. And you can see that the majority of that, 66%, came from individuals. So while we all think of foundations and corporations and institutions like that as a place to go to for money, it's really the individuals who are doing the bulk of the giving. And when you include bequests, which is that 8% in that green, it's really about 74% coming from individuals for that total charitable giving. And you might ask, well, where do those individuals give? Well, religion is the number one or the highest percentage of giving. And they give to religion most because religion asks most, usually once a week. So when you're in front of donors and you ask, you get, right? So a lot of that goes to religion, and then you can see on the list where the rest goes. I'm not sure that this is reflective of our community, though, for those of you who are part of the Giving Partner and see all of those dollars going to Cat Depot every year. You might be surprised to see environment and animals at the very bottom, but different communities, this is nationwide again. But there you get an idea of who's giving and where that money is going to. And interestingly enough, for this particular topic, governments don't typically fund religious organizations. So you're seeing that the most people who are giving are individuals, and they're mostly giving to churches. So the impact on our nonprofits is even more extreme because the dollars are going to religion mostly. So again, taking a step back, where did all of this federal grant making start anyway? Well, with the Great Society of the 1960s. That's when the federal government realized that they weren't able to take care of all the needs that communities were experiencing. So they developed partnership with nonprofits to fund them, boots on the ground to take care of those needs in the individual communities. So for 60 years now, presidential administrations and the legislative branch have partnered with nonprofits to cover some of those issues. So in 2021, which is the last year I could find relevant data, $267 billion in government funding was made across 103,000 plus organizations nationwide. This represents 3 times total foundation giving that same year, just to get an idea of how much it is. In Florida that year, $12.4 billion was awarded. So you can see that there's a pretty significant sum that's going to these nonprofits. Now, if we're looking at this year, knowing the cuts that are coming, and I'm going to get into those in just a minute, if all the cuts go through as planned, that will mean that 68% of Manatee County organizations will operate in a deficit because of those decreased funds. 68%. That's huge. And going back to those individuals giving, private donations would need to increase by 8 times. So your individual donors who are already giving would need to increase 8 times in order to make up that deficit. So some of the impacts, where are the biggest impacts? Well, number one, the single largest impact is the cut to SNAP benefits. And that'll be about $167 billion over 10 years. So about $1.7 billion a year, just in SNAP benefits alone. You also have cuts to education, some of the after-school mentoring programs, to prison recidivism control work that's being done. So one of the things, you look at these impacts and the dollar amounts, and they're extreme. But what we're not seeing are the ripple effects. So I'll go back to that SNAP example. And when you look at small rural communities that might have one grocery store in them, and a significant portion of the residents in that community rely on SNAP benefits, that means that those customers who lose those SNAP benefits can no longer go and support that single grocery store. So how much of these cuts will we not see the impacts of for years down the line? So to say that they are going to be very impactful is an understatement for sure. And then just to understand what our nonprofits are dealing with right now, even before the cuts took place, 85% when surveyed, according to the Nonprofit Finance Fund, expected demand to increase in 2025. A lot of that is because of the rising cost of housing, inflation in other areas, that people just can't meet their daily means on the income that they have. We see that a lot in Manatee County, specifically with retirees, and people on a fixed income are no longer able to afford their rent payments or their mortgage payments, so they're turning to nonprofits for help. 36% of nonprofit organizations in the country ended 2024 in a deficit already, which is shocking. So they're not bringing enough money in to meet their expenses. Almost 90% say that inflation has directly impacted them. And the scariest part for all of us, I think, in this room, is that 52% have less than 3 months cash on hand. So if their income is cut significantly, they might be able to continue operating for 3 months, but that's it. And then where do people go who need help in our community? So that was my role here today, was to paint this big rosy picture for everybody. And I will now turn it back over to Xtavia, who will introduce Veronica.
Please give Wendy a round of applause. As you can see, they have, this is their program. And so, Wendy, you got this. I appreciate it so much. Next, we'll have Veronica Thames, CEO of Manatee Community Foundation. As the leader of MCF since August of 2023, Veronica has been working closely with board of directors and staff team to set and execute on strategy that would propel the organization forward to enhance the quality of life of the communities we serve. Veronica has served as the Chief Operating Officer and Senior Vice President of Gulf Coast Community Foundation since August 2018. Her role was to translate Gulf Coast vision and goals into action, from expansion of operations, including the opening of the Sarasota Philanthropy Center. Working with the community leadership team, she created and executed bold and proactive initiatives that transformed her region by leading the Invest in Incredible and leading the charge on the strong culture that has resulted in the organization being named Best Nonprofit to Work For 6 times. I'm going to stop here with Veronica, and I'm going to allow her to come up because this isn't updated. And I know she's doing a whole lot of other things with Manatee Community Foundation, and she's so important to Manatee County right now. And you all know Veronica. I'm gonna let you take this, Veronica.
Thank you, Xavier. Can you hear me? Yeah? There's always like this distance between me and the mic wherever I go, so checking in. So Veronica Thames, CEO of Manatee Community Foundation, super grateful for the opportunity to share a stage with these amazing ladies who are movers and shakers in philanthropy, and with each one of you who made the time today to be here, but makes the time every single day to pour back from your heart, your soul, your time, and your treasure into this community. So thank you. So what is the mission of Manatee Community Foundation? I'm going to channel one of my board members here, Susie Walters, who says, I need to slow down. And I think most of you agree with her. Our mission is to partner with our community, with our citizens, to strengthen and enhance our community through philanthropy, education, and service, now and forever. And that is a really amazing charge. It's a charge to exist into perpetuity, to support our community and its citizens' needs. MCF was created by community members, the 3 Bobs, Bob Blaylock, Bob Christopher, and Bob Bell, who partnered with the then publisher of the Bradenton Herald, and raised $1 million within 6 months to establish the first and the only community foundation in Manatee that serves the entire county. They knew that our community needed help and support into perpetuity, and they work together as people of this community for this community. And that's what's super unique about MCF. Unlike other community foundations, we were birthed by our people on site. So you'll wonder, what is a community foundation? It's a difficult concept sometimes to explain, but I'll boil it down. Excuse me. We're a creature of the IRS, so we are a 501c3. We are a collection of funds, a collection of funds, 365 specifically at MCF today, and a collection of legacy funds. That's the commitments that donors and philanthropists make to leave a legacy once they've passed. So we have a very large family of 365 funds and almost 300 legacy funds, donors that we work with very closely and that we want to get to know so that we can ensure that their dreams live on to perpetuity. Unlike a private foundation, we have all those donors to support and also to please. And when they establish funds with our community foundation, they create parameters around those funds, which means that the funds that we have are earmarked and designated and thought through in specific ways, and not the most flexible or responsive. So we rely upon each of you in fundraising to make for the operations of the community foundation so that we can deliver services to our community through the initiatives we do, the convenings that we do, and so forth. So a collection of donors with intent of philanthropy and also fundraising for our operations so we can continue to deliver in other areas. I'm glad to say that this year, under the leadership of our very own Danny Sherrill, who hates being called out in public, and here she is, we will cross two very, very important thresholds in the life of Manatee Community Foundation, which is relatively a very young foundation, 27 years old. We will cross the threshold of having infused our community with over $70 million of impactful financial support in our life. And we will cross the threshold of being $70 million in assets as a community foundation, which again ensures our perpetuity and our sustainability. So very important thresholds to cross. And what is it a community foundation actually does? We are a geographically focused organization, in our case, Manatee County and surrounding areas, though we can grant across the entire nation. And we do three things pointedly. We improve the quality of life of the communities we serve. We do that in a variety of ways, from convenings to creating task forces like the Child Care Alliance or the COAD, to grants, granting to our nonprofits, scholarships to our nonprofits, creating initiatives of our own, like the Disaster Resilience Initiative, the Foster Care Initiative, Reach Manatee, and I see our Education Foundation friends here as well, who partner, and our Jackie Daselsky at Chamber of Commerce, who together work to establish the Reach Manatee and create greater levels of attainment, college and other professions post high school graduation. We have a lot of those initiatives, and we function also within the areas of animal welfare, health, human services, education, and arts and culture. So one of the pieces, right, quality of life, the core of Community Foundation's work. The other is partnering with our donors, because without their support, none of that would be possible. They are our key audience. They are our partners, and they are our benefactors. And we work, again, as I said, with several, almost 1,000 different donors that support our activities. We help them discover their philanthropic dreams and put them into action and amplify their philanthropy. They open funds with us, they invest, and their dollars grow through investments, and they can give a lot more than they thought when they first met MCF. Of course, we are very responsible in our investments as well, and we allow our donors to make choices around how they invest those dollars, not only in the community, but how they're invested in the market so they can grow aggressively and have a greater impact. And all of that at a tax advantage, both on a capital gains perspective and a tax bracket perspective. So lots of reasons to talk to MCF, if you haven't yet, to establish your very own donor advised fund and create that long-term philanthropic impact you want to have. So a bit about me and how I got here. For those of you wondering, what's the accent? Where is she from? I was born in Buenos Aires, Argentina, so I am an import. I lived in Argentina for 19 years, and I got to come to the U.S. as a decision my dad made to get a job here in the U.S. where he was being recruited. I hated him so much. It was the worst day of my life. It was my 19th birthday. I actually left And I was 18, and we landed, and I was 19 years old here in a brand new country with a new language. 2 weeks in, I started college, and I realized that wherever you go, there you are. So the question is what you do with a circumstance and not let the circumstance define you. And that is a privilege that I have every day working at MCF, is to help define circumstances in partnership with others for our community and not let the difficult times that we're experiencing define us. And Wendy did an amazing job sharing about the levels of philanthropy at a national level. Let me take it down to the local level. So as you've heard, over $600 billion with a B dollars go into philanthropy every year in our country. MCF recently conducted a survey of our nonprofit partners to understand what the impact of federal funding cuts would be. We are still open, so if you haven't taken our survey and you're a nonprofit partner, you better do that before I get back to my desk. And what we're finding so far is that out of the 200 organizations that in Sarasota, in Manatee, that receive federal funding, 68 of them are located here in Manatee. And 60% of them have already reported receiving funding cuts or being affected by funding cuts. Almost 50% expect additional funding cuts to come. And as Wendy shared, that will create a recipe for disaster when we think about the SNAP, Medicaid, and education cuts that will be upon us as a result of the implementation of the big, beautiful bill. And I'll say this other piece. At MCF, we have decided that we will approach the big, beautiful bill's implementation as an opportunity, as we do everything else, to get more efficient, to find synergies, to get more transparent, more data-focused, and more impactful. So we see the opportunity, and we will approach it as such. But we will have a very big role to play as philanthropists with our private foundation partners to fill the gap that will be left when these cuts take place. Back to the very, very local viewpoint. Funding cuts, as I share, are coming, and they are here. And when you think about the ALICE population, asset-limited, income-constrained, but employed families, those are trying to make it work. Usually a single mom with a couple of kids or parents with a couple of kids whose primary expense is housing and secondary expense is childcare. That's why MCF put together, with the help of many of you in this room, the Child Care Alliance to try to fix that problem. So that family of four needs to make $86,600 to survive, and that is the very, very minimum. That is about 80,000 households in our county. Last year, it was 77,000. So we know that we're going in the wrong direction. We also have a growth in population that we're not prepared to take. And we know that the demographic distribution of the growth of that population is also challenging, with the Hispanic Latino segment growing the fastest and providing different layers of complexity in the needs that our community will experience. 11% of our households are in poverty. That is below the ALICE threshold. A third of Manatee County school kids are chronically absent, and 50+% of them are on reduced or free lunches. 51% of our third graders are reading on grade level. And what that means is they're very unlikely to graduate high school, those who cannot read at grade level. And that means they'll rely on the welfare system or perhaps even land in prison or jail as a result of some of the circles they'll be with and the actions that they might take. So I see Amanda Horn here and all her focus on early learning and reading. Those are the programs that our community needs to elevate that third grade level reading and in high school graduation and produce a citizen of our community who can be self-sufficient. And so with that, I can continue on, but I hope to save a few of my commentary specifically around the role that you can play as a philanthropist, and also about the impact of the tax code changes that will discourage giving this year and not encouraging, with a floor of 0.5% for individuals and 1% for corporations before your gift can be considered tax deductible. So I'd love to talk about that if there's time, and also celebrate my compatriots here. It is a team sport. Philanthropy will always be a team sport, and rely on each one of you to be part of that team. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Veronica. I remember when you came to Manatee County, one thing you didn't do is pause. You were everywhere very quickly, and also just to let our community know that you were here to make sure that the people that needed the most help, that you were going to lead that way. So thank you for all you do. Please give her a round of applause, another round of applause. Thank you. Next, we have Tracy Vanderneck, President of Philcom LLC. Tracy is a nonprofit industry expert that works with nonprofit organizations to improve both their governance and fundraising. She has 25 years of experience in fundraising, nonprofit leadership, and business development. Tracy holds a Master's of Science in Management with concentration in nonprofit leadership and a graduate certificate in teaching and learning, and is a certified fundraising executive. She is certified Association of Fundraising Professionals, master training facilitator. Tracy also holds a certificate of nonprofit board consulting and board sources. I'm going to stop there because I've worked with her in several entities, boards. I see Rick with Humane Society. It's a lot of nonprofits represented, and she came in many. I met you years ago, coming, doing what you're doing. So thank you for all you do. Please give her a round of applause as she comes forward.
As Octavia said, I'm Tracy Vanderneck with Philcom. And Philcom is where philanthropy and communications meet. So I do a lot of work with nonprofits around the country, across Florida, and in Manatee and Sarasota counties. And I have worked with a number of people here in the room to help improve your board governance and fundraising. Over the last 9 months, I've heard from hundreds of nonprofits throughout various channels about what's been happening since the federal funding cuts and the resulting nonprofit sector job losses. Here are just a few of the words that I heard from them. Unprecedented, volatile, uncertain, ambiguous, imploding, unstable, and calamitous. Then there are the words they use to describe how they've been feeling during the same time. Scared, ill, worried, concerned, overwhelmed, inadequate, and out of control. So now let me ask, how many of you here work for nonprofit organizations or are board members? Okay, a lot. Or have donated money or volunteered. All right. Have visited a museum, gone to a community event, or attended church. All right, I'm pretty sure that covers pretty much everyone in the room. All of us have a stake in what happens in our community when it comes to health, education, food security, job and housing security, and other such needs. So the financial loss and projected increased need for services that Wendy and Veronica discussed in some way touches almost everyone we know. Knowing the general sentiment from those involved in the nonprofits by the words I shared, let's talk about some things that we can start to do to feel more in control and the steps that we can take to have an impact on what our future will be. And I'm going to talk about this in the perspective of how you engage with nonprofits. Number one, nonprofits should evaluate everything they do and make hard decisions about what they need to adjust in order to stay viable. Organizations should be asking themselves, what are our core programs and do they still align with the mission and vision of our organization? Which of those programs have the highest usage and the best impact? And is it now an appropriate time to put some of our programs on hiatus? Do we currently have expansion plans? And if we do, given the new projections for the nonprofit industry, should we revisit those expansion plans? Number two, smart organizations are engaging in scenario planning. Such planning basically allows you to do an environmental scan of your internal and external environment and define what would happen in various outcomes. So you determine if option A happens, we would do this. If option B happens, we might do that. It helps you prepare for various eventualities and decreases the likelihood that you'll be caught unaware. Number 3, advocate for yourselves. It's more important now than ever that nonprofits do not just quietly go about their business. For the funding that is available, it is important that relationships are cultivated and people are educated so that they can make informed decisions about giving. And Wendy shared that it was more than 66% of giving comes from individuals. So we need to be forging those relationships and educating people. Board members, volunteers, staff, clients can all be a part of advocating for their organizations at all levels. Number 4, forge partnerships. Partnerships are always a good idea between nonprofits, but now more so than ever. We need to eliminate service redundancy wherever possible and ensure we're not spread thin by consolidating funding and volunteers to fewer places where possible. Number 5, consider mergers or acquisitions for the greater good. Now, this one is never popular with the nonprofits themselves, but hear me out. Sometimes it might be the best alternative. There's a theory of action called purpose-driven nonprofits. It's basically the idea that nonprofit leadership should act in a way that is best for the community it serves. It puts the purpose they exist in the community, the mission they exist to deliver, before their nonprofit organization itself. So sometimes it's better to consolidate efforts instead of having competing parties or having to close altogether due to lack of funds. In Sarasota and Manatee counties together, there are over 1,200 registered nonprofit organizations. Until now, the region has been able to sustain this number of nonprofits and any possible redundancies, though maybe not very well, because the lion's share of nonprofits have always reported that they have difficulty raising the funds that they need to thrive. Now, with the federal funding cuts, there will be even more competition for funding that will simply not be there. Not all of our region's nonprofits are or were federally funded, but those that were and lost federal funding will now be seeking philanthropic sources to make up the shortfalls. And as Wendy described, there just aren't enough philanthropic dollars to go around. And there's nothing to guarantee that the people that are able to give, that they want to give in the specific areas that have the most need at the moment. Number 6, and the last idea that I'll cover here is for nonprofits to focus on effective storytelling and sharing their impact. Financial supporters need to be able to cut through all of the information that's coming at them to find out which organizations' missions compel them and which can demonstrate the good that they are doing. So nonprofits should be bold, be creative, and be succinct in your storytelling. Succinct is important. Now I'd like to finish by sharing with you some of the words that I heard from people in the nonprofit sector this year when asked how they might be part of the solution going forward. Those words were partnerships, collaboration, storytelling, economies of scale, efficiencies, creativity, community, and my personal favorite, nonprofit kintsugi, which is the Japanese art of making something even more beautiful by taking pieces of the original item that has been smashed to smithereens and reforming them using lacquer mixed with gold, silver, or platinum. So though we may be a long way off from creating something that's better than what we had before, looking around this room, knowing how many of you are connected with nonprofits in some way, and considering all of the people that nonprofits touch daily, I'd say that we have the ability to be okay and come out the other side. We just have to ensure that we take care of one another along the way. Thank you.
Tracy, I think you wrapped it all up, because without governance and fundraising, then nonprofits cannot survive. I'm the chair of the CSAB. On the government side, we see about maybe 85 applications come in every year. We fund probably about 65 of them. And we go through their budgets and we go through everything, but like they said, we can't fund everything. And we never want to cut anyone. So I would ask the panel, what do you think the biggest disconnect is with community, what needs to be solved, and what priorities are actually out there that we're not looking at?
In general, I think that you would find that out if you were operating a for-profit business in research. And there are a lot of times where nonprofits fail to apply good business decision-making in a nonprofit capacity. So if you do that, that research into what the needs are ahead of time, so you know you're addressing the most critical. If you look to find out who else might be providing a similar service and partner with them rather than starting a nonprofit yourself. There are just some basic good business practices that could be applied in the nonprofit world to help alleviate some of that disconnect. But you really have to understand what your audience, your core audience, wants and needs. And a lot of times we run from the heart rather than the brain.
That's good.
Agreed. I'll say another disconnect is that our donors and our incredible community wants to pour out support in very specific ways. And that is a huge challenge for our nonprofit partners. What they need is the faith that you will place on them with a gift that is unrestricted, that is toward operations and with a broader aperture so that they can use it when and where it's needed best. And we all know community changes daily. Nobody expected COVID. We didn't have a COVID fund, right, as a nonprofit getting ready for that disaster. So whenever you gift, think about the true greater good of the community, and please gift in unrestricted ways.
Another area, Wendy mentioned that, people lead with their hearts, and oftentimes will maybe start a nonprofit in an area of their passion, but there may already be organizations that exist that are doing either the same thing or something similar. So, tell me if you have a different opinion, but there are ways that people can address that. Either work with the organizations that already exist, or if you want to donate, you can potentially open a donor advised fund at a community foundation where you're directing your money, but you don't actually have to have the foundation yourself. So there are ways to use the resources that are already here in the community, and you can still have the good heart feeling from what you are giving. It just doesn't have to be in its own separate nonprofit.
I'll add one little piece. We recently held a Manatee Connects, which is our training capacity building series for our nonprofit partners. Many of you attend, on a topic that we called "So You Want to Start a Nonprofit," and we had 46 people who signed up and showed up and did the training, and then we had a second session, which was
delivering that class.
That's right, she sure did. And I said, wait, I have a plan.
I love it.
And so session 2 was for those who passed a series of checkpoints and were then truly capable, ready, and able, and understood that they truly did need a new nonprofit. That group were 5. So from 46 to 5, that gives you an idea of the disconnect as we were sharing earlier.
That is so true. For those of you who want to ask the panel a question, you may go to the microphone. My referee is standing there waving. You may, thank you, Christy. You may ask. So I have another question for you, ladies. So we talked about the disconnect. And so say, for instance, there is someone who's on fixed income who wants to help a nonprofit that maybe help them. What can they give? Can they give to you? Yes.
That's beautiful. I love that we all have a caring heart, and a lot of times we need to look at the time and place in our life continuum, and evolve with it. We can't all give time or treasure or talent at the same time. Some of us can, right? I see some of you in this room. But it's okay to say, I want to make a difference. I can't just now. So meet with your community foundation and create a legacy plan. That is the longest term commitment you can ever make to a community or to anyone. It's a legacy commitment. And it's very simple. You come to MCF, we chat about your interests, your thoughts, your plans. We draft a very simple roadmap, we call the legacy agreement, and we lay out your wishes for when you pass. We can involve your family. We can not involve your family. Sometimes that's a thing. We can have that hard conversation with your family. And we can also make sure that your dreams are kept into perpetuity with the purpose that you initially intended. No gift is too small, and you can change your wishes any single day that you want to, 0 cost. So it's very easy to create a legacy agreement. I encourage everyone to have one. I heard from someone a long time ago who said to me, there's only one truth in life, Veronica. Everyone is born with a beneficiary, and that is Uncle Sam. So let's make sure that we keep our dollars in the communities we care about by creating a legacy plan with your community foundation.
That's good. Does anyone else?
Add one, thanks. And in addition to that, if there was somebody on fixed income that wanted to help, there are any number of ways, including volunteering with organizations. I'm sorry? Yes, exactly. Board service. Board service is evolving, and it is no longer the fact that you have to be wealthy to be valuable on a nonprofit board. We all sorts of people from all different areas, regions, socioeconomic backgrounds are valuable on boards of directors, especially if they have any lived experience relative to the nonprofit that they want to help. So nobody should feel like they don't have enough to offer to be truly useful.
I'm going to go to the question.
Sure. Hi, I'm Liv Coleman. I'm a professor of political science at the University of Tampa, and I live in Manatee County. Thank you so much for this presentation today, and the words about the sobering words about the impact of the federal budget cuts for this community. And I was wondering if you could speak a bit about the state and local potential impact of if there's currently a proposal right now to eliminate property taxes in the state of Florida, and what would this mean for the nonprofit landscape if property taxes went away?
Well, that's the $1 million question right there. It depends on, that money is needed. So we can get rid of property taxes, but taxes will pop up. It's like whack-a-mole. You knock one down, another tax is going to pop up. So if that is then a sales tax, the state increase in the state sales tax, or bringing in a state income tax, or something like that. It could have additional devastating impacts on the community. So it's just, it all sounds good. Oh, yes, relieve me of that tax. I'd be happy not to pay that anymore. But those are services that have to be done, that have to be given to our community. So it is a lot of decisions are being made without the voices in the room that are most impacted. So I would encourage anybody who has connections with some of the state leadership to really think about the long-term impacts that come with decisions like that, rather than trying to make decisions like that to win elections. And I'll stop there.
And don't quote me on the number, but I believe in Manatee County that averages to about $15 a year, to a maximum of about $200. So I'd give that up any day for our nonprofits. But I'll say to Wendy's point about advocacy, and I think we all talked about advocacy in a way or another. I just came back from DC. I'm grateful that my board supports our advocacy efforts. We went and talked to a lot of people about specifically the impacts of the Big Beautiful Bill on our nonprofit partners here in Manatee County and this region. We had some colorful conversations. But I think the understanding is that the bill is here. It is here to stay. So the question is, how do we navigate it? So we have a couple of choices. We bury our head in the sand, or we come up with a plan. So this is a time when we urge our nonprofit partners to look at your reserves. You consolidate service lines and narrow back to core mission. Partner with others to make sure that the services remain provided, but the most efficient organization is delivering those services. And advocate for yourself. Show your value. Tell your story succinctly and well. And advocate. It was a pleasure to be up there and have those very deep conversations. There is an understanding that there will be a consequence to our nonprofit partners. I think the challenge is that there's a perception that philanthropy will fill the entire gap, which we all know is not physically possible. And I'll share a couple of bits on that space. So this is what I call the perfect storm. So Medicaid, SNAP, education cuts, right? A growing population, and the segments of the population are growing with the greatest needs in segments that are perhaps not employed, perhaps don't even speak the language, they're immigrants. There are many layers to the needs that they will have. So growing population, greater, more complex needs, cuts. And if the solution is perceived to be philanthropy, then the tax code is not helping. The tax code changes that are taking place are putting floors on individuals of 0.5% and corporations of 1% before any gift can be considered as a tax-deductible gift and recognized. And so those that are giving at the lower thresholds are most likely going to stop. So what our nonprofits ought to be doing, and we as foundations need to be doing, is looking at our current donors who are already committing to our causes and trying to expand and develop those relationships further. We also need to go advocate and share the consequence of those cuts and come up with solutions, not just talk about the problem. Maybe share how we can help consolidate services, become more efficient, utilize data, and utilize technology to advance. And if you can, open a donor advice fund or another fund at a community foundation and bunch your gifts. What that means is that you can give, say, for 3 years, your entire deduction for each year all at once. You get a greater tax advantage on the first year. Those dollars are then invested in an account that grows with the market. And then you can give more than you put in. You can get a greater tax relief in the 1 year, and everyone wins. So this is the year to give, not the year to cut back.
Just follow up what you just said. Do you all do kind of something like United Way does also? Is that something that they could do, is like add you to the
A fundraising. So not at MCF. There are a lot of organizations where you can make a tax-deductible gift through your paycheck, if that's where you're going to. Those are private organizations. I know local organizations like KFCCI have that program in place. So as an employer, you can create that program, pool those dollars, and set up a fund at a community foundation in that same way that grows and that allows you to give out of that fund into the community, both as an individual or a corporation. So that's possible, yes.
And I also want to mention that philanthropy, the way it exists now, is a uniquely American phenomenon. The first community foundation was created to solve a problem because there were trusts left to support the wagons traveling across this country. And when trains were available and cars, those wagons were no longer needed, but you had these trusts that still existed with funding in there. So the community foundation was established with an independent board that would have the ability to rewrite the need on those trusts to meet current community needs. And that was in Cleveland, Ohio, over 100 years ago. So there is American ingenuity at work, and I have no doubt that we will resolve this problem. We will be creative and think of a way to address it. There will be short-term pain that we are dealing with, and we will have to support our nonprofit partners the best we can through the times and accept that some will need to shut their doors because of this, and some will need extra help and might need loans or things like that. So it's just a matter of figuring out how we can meet their needs as they come to us at any given point in time.
So as we end, and I'm going to start with Tracy, and then we'll come down to Wendy, if we can just kind of give some advice to our nonprofits or people who might want to donate or maybe help and volunteer. But what would you say as far as the messaging for community foundations and boards, as far as the person who maybe wants to take their money and leave it somewhere because they may not have any children or family, and they say, well, there's no one that represents me that's making those decisions. How do I know it's going to go where I want it to go? And I did hear Veronica say something about unrestricted funds and you all having the ability to be able to make those decisions where those needs are. And how do we know where the priorities are coming up when we need to change to do something to get better results?
I think if people are looking to invest in something that they feel strongly about or that they want to know where that need is, if they have the ability, they should do their own research to find out, what's happening in the community, who's doing what's available. And by doing research, a lot of us do this already, that if we want to invest in a nonprofit, we go and look them up on Candid, which used to be GuideStar. We look them up on the Giving Partner profile. We look at things like their staff, their board, their compensation. Are they being equitable between their board and their staff? Are they representative of the people that they serve? People have different qualifiers that we all each find important. So it's important that when you're researching, you do it through the lens of what's important to you, certainly. But if you don't feel equipped to do that on your own, that's when community foundations really come in, play an important part, because you can sit down with them, talk to them about your interests, even if you're not exactly sure what you want to have happen, and even if you're not really ready to open a fund with them yet, just them knowing about you and knowing what your interests are, they can kind of keep you in the back of their mind so that when projects come up or when new research comes up that they think you might be interested in, they can either connect with you or connect you to the nonprofits that they feel like might make sense. They are fantastic community connectors. So that's what I would say about trying to find ways to invest in what you care the most about.
And any advice for our boards, our board leadership?
Yes. I always have advice for boards and board leadership. Boards, this is a really unique time for boards. And one, I would say, it's important that you all stay educated about what's going on. Now, that doesn't mean you want to open the fire hose for every executive order and then just be completely overwhelmed and think that the sky is completely falling. It may be falling a little bit, but we're trying to prop that sucker up, right? So we want our boards to really understand what's happening and what the repercussions are or might be, but we also want them to be helping the organizations determine what the best next step is for them. Are they examining what they're doing now to find out if it's what they should be doing or they're efficient? Are they looking at what the next steps are? Should they keep existing or should they become part of another organization? Do they have more than 3 months worth of reserves? Any organization now that has under 3 months of reserves is basically signaling to supporters out there that they may not be financially viable to keep going. So I think it's important that boards, 1, keep educated, 2, keep strategic, and 3, keep in great partnership with the executives at the organization, because they need you, they need to be working with you, and you all should be making the decisions together, because these cuts affect the staff a lot. Staff morale, being able to keep staff, and the board needs to, they need to know what's happening with that, but then also be able to remain, far back enough that they're not, in daily operations and doing anything that might be construed as micromanaging, but that they are using their areas of expertise, their time, and their effort in either helping the organization survive and thrive, or helping figure out what the next legacy is going to be. And maybe the legacy is, we decided to act for the greater good of the community as instead of the greater good of our own organization, and we decided to work with somebody else instead so that the community could get the service that they needed. So those are my thoughts.
Thank you so much.
And I'd like to challenge ourselves and not think about merger and acquisition, and instead think about transformation. Nothing in life is constant. So just like anything else, right, we have to evolve. So if we are a nonprofit organization, is there a partner I should be aligned with? So great points, Tracy. I'll say a couple more. Serve on boards. Give of your talent and your time. That is the most precious commodity. I know Miss Danny Sherrill here gives way a lot of it to MCF. Serve. And when you do, respect the boundary of operations and serving on a board. Hire the right executive and then let them be, right? If you hire the right person, you should be comfortable doing that. And if not, that's a telltale sign that maybe that's not the person, or they don't have the tools they need to deliver the job. So provide those tools as a board member, and that coaching and that leeway. Retain them. The highest cost any business incurs, private or nonprofit, is turnover, right? When you're in the people business, turnover is the most costly. So retain your leader. Find a way to create the environment that they want to stay in. Set up to receive MCF's newsletter, so you can attend our Manatee Connects training, so that you can know what's going on in the community, so that you can learn about funding opportunities and also grant opportunities. So you can learn about scholarships and the legacy of our donors that are so inspiring. And sign up for board links. My friend right here is going to be helping us teach a couple of classes for those who are interested in board service. And then we're going to have a matchmaking event at the new Dr. Jan Pullen STEAM Center, where we're going to match our nonprofits with potential board prospects. We need to elevate board service, and we need to provide that opportunity to our nonprofits to access that talent. So we'll be doing that at MCF. Make sure you sign up. Give unrestricted. Number one for our nonprofits. Find the right organization, maybe in partnership with your community foundation to channel your passions, but then trust them and give that unrestricted gift. Share your priorities with your community foundation. Even if you're not a donor, we can match you with a priority. We don't have to have a donor advice fund with you to guide you to give impactful philanthropic gifts. So partner with MCF. Create a legacy fund, whether it's at MCF or another community foundation. You must have an action plan for your future. And again, you can change it all the times you want, but meet with a foundation, set up a legacy fund, and you know that your legacy will be protected. And when you give appreciated assets so that you can also take advantage on a tax side and potentially on a capital gains side. We have story after story of business sales, real estate sales, other interests, even art, that are sold, and the proceeds give the philanthropic beginnings to a family and in a new fund. So appreciated assets, business interests, research. I love the Urban Institute, a great place to get a lot of data. Of course, Candid and Tracy mentioned a few other sources. Locally, United Way's Alice Report and beyond. And as a nonprofit, diversify your funding sources, your revenue sources. Do not rely on the government. Do not rely on one donor. Diversify your funding sources.
Wendy, I'm sorry.
Can you remind me of the original question, please?
She's not doing it. No. So the importance of researching, and if a donor wants to give, making sure that they're represented, even if they don't think they're represented. How do they trust the community foundations? And what would be your advice to board leadership?
Okay, so donor intent is our Bible in the nonprofit world. If a donor tells us the way that they want those funds invested, by golly, those funds will be invested the way that the donor asks. You can lose your 501c3 status as a nonprofit organization if you don't. So be very clear with whoever you're giving that this is either restricted or I only want it for puppies born on Tuesday. You can be very specific, and if if a nonprofit is willing to accept that gift for puppies born on Tuesdays, then they will use it for puppies born on Tuesdays, because they will get audited, and the auditors will look at those records, and if they used it for puppies born on Wednesdays, you better watch out. So donor intent is really important in our world, and I hope that I showed you that by starting with Ned and Patty Bishop and Mary Parker. They left an amazing legacy in this community, and I am honored to be a very short-term shepherd of that legacy for as long as I'm here. And it will live on forever. Those who leave legacy funds at MCF will have that same benefit where people will be talking about them forever. And I just want to leave you with one tale that we've heard a lot in the philanthropic world, especially community foundations, is there is an old indigenous saying that individuals actually die twice. The first time is when your heart stops beating, and the second time is the last name your name is said. So when you leave a legacy in the community, you'll live on, really, forever, because 100 years from now, 200 years from now, that private foundation, we'll be talking about Bishop Parker. I will be in the ground for years, and they will still be talking about Bishop Parker Foundation and the funds that are left at MCF. So I think that's really important to consider as you're thinking about your future.
Thank you so much. I don't think this is enough time for all this good information. The nonprofits are the heart of the community, and you all are doing an amazing job helping our nonprofits being developed and supported, and we appreciate Wendy Deming, Veronica Thames, Tracy Vanderneck. Please give them another round of applause. Thank you all for coming today. Tracy has the 60-minute guide, Building the Infrastructure for a Successful Nonprofit Fundraising. That's over there on the table. You also, if you want to get in touch with Veronica or Wendy on the Manatee Tiger Bay website, we have their information. Thank you to METV today, and to the board members, thank you so much for your support. You all have a great day. Thank you.